Hi, folks. Welcome. We're just going to give it one more minute. I see that the participant numbers are ticking up, and so I'll just give it, just maybe 30 more seconds, and then we can get started. Thanks, everyone. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I think we'll get started. On behalf of the webinar organizers, again, welcome. We're so delighted to see you all. My name's Miho Laguerre. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Plastic Pollution Policy Manager with the Surfrider Foundation. Thanks for joining us today, and happy Valentine's Day. This holiday is all about expressing our love and appreciation. And I'm really excited to be here today with you all and our wonderful presenters, and to share our love for our environment, including our ocean and coasts. Unfortunately, we're in a toxic and messy relationship with single-use plastics. Plastics harms our communities, environment, and bodies. And most of these single-use plastic items are used for mere minutes. Plastic lasts forever, and as romantic as it may sound, it's not a relationship that we want to be in. Unfortunately, there are better options out there, and there's people working tirelessly day in and day out to break up with plastic, and we'll be hearing from them today. So welcome. Next slide, please. And real quick, before we dive in, a few housekeeping items. So the webinar is currently being recorded, and it'll be shared out after this webinar. So for folks that registered but weren't able to attend, you'll receive a recording with it, along with the call to actions and recording and resources. And please ask any questions using the Q&A function or the chat function. Unfortunately, with the wonderful lineup of speakers we have today, we won't have time to be able to get into the questions directly, but if you put it in the chat or Q&A function, our panelists or webinar organizers will try to address them. So next slide, please. Providing a quick lay of the land in the plastic policy landscape. I think we're at a really critical time for comprehensively reducing plastic pollution. Over the past few years, we've seen a surge of public interest in legislative action reflecting this. And just last year, we saw 36 states introduce over 280 bills related to plastic pollution. Extended producer responsibility, or EPR, bills for paper and plastic packaging are gaining traction in multiple states, with 2 states, California and Colorado, passing EPR legislation in 2022. Single-use plastic reduction options, including EPR and bottle bills, and banning chemical recycling practices, were also avenues states considered in 2022. And we expect to see this continued focus on these topics in 2023, and the potential for multiple state policy successes as lawmakers and advocates center their efforts on the entire value chain of plastics and its detrimental effects on health, our communities, and environment. So you'll see on this screen the map from our friends at the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators that already just this year in many states are just starting up their legislative session, that we already have 53 bills introduced or pre-filed that deal with plastic pollution reduction or zero waste, and we anticipate many more as we move forward. And on the next slide, you'll see who you'll be hearing from today, of many policy experts. So we're really excited and delighted to have everyone here today. So we'll be taking a quick tour around the country to hear folks from Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Tennessee, New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts. And so again, since we have so many wonderful experts, we'll only have about 5 minutes for each person to talk about their legislative priorities. And then we're really honored to have the Attorney General from California, Attorney General Rob Bonta join us after our presenters. His office is leading efforts to hold plastic companies accountable for polluting our communities. And so he'll be providing an update about the investigation that's going on. So we're really delighted to have him. And then we'll wrap up with how you can break up with plastics with my colleague, Holly Thompson with PIRG, and she'll walk us through some action items that you can take to help break up with plastic. And then I'll wrap up with highlighting a few resources from our presenters and webinar organizers. And again, this will all be shared at the end of the webinar. So let's learn about how states are breaking up with plastics. And then I will turn it over to Charlie Plybon, who I am lucky to work with, the Surfrider Foundation's Oregon Policy Manager. So we'll stop sharing our screen there. And Charlie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Miho. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Can I get a thumbs up from Miho or folks? All right, perfect. Again, my name is Charlie Plybon. I'm the Oregon Policy Manager for Surfrider Foundation. And I'm really excited to join this event. We've got some great things going on in Oregon. We're breaking up with plastics today. We actually have 3 or 4 hearings happening right after this event. So I'll be packing up my bags and heading over to Salem to join some of my colleagues. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about some of those policies today. Actually, we've had a lot of success in Oregon over the years in addressing plastic pollution and single-use plastic. Unfortunately, the policies that we're hearing today have not made it across the finish line the past 3 or 4 years that we've introduced them. So in working with a really impressive coalition of individuals and groups, we started a zero waste coalition during the 2022 session to sort of get ourselves geared up for this year and to better build grassroots support for 4 key policies. Really, we're looking at a policy that gets rid of the most toxic non-recyclable single-use plastic out there, which is polystyrene. So Senate Bill 543 has been introduced, which is phase out of polystyrene foam containers and cups statewide. And it also bans PFAS in food containers and as well as packaging. We also have another bill to allow Oregonians to fix their stuff. This is one that hasn't made it across the finish line the past few years that it's been introduced. We're really hopeful this year that right to repair, Senate Bill 542, which is reducing e-waste by giving Oregonians access to tools and diagnostics to fix their stuff. We're really hopeful that that one's going to move this year and get across the finish line. So again, another major effort in trying to reduce our single-use plastics is just allowing access to individuals to fix the things they have already. Another key policy that we're working on this session is Senate Bill 544, which sort of follows up on our EPR bill, but really sets target reduction goals and requires producers of single-use packaging and foodware to reduce their packaging by 25% over the next 10 years. So this is really about putting a measuring stick and trying to move the needle on the reduction of plastics and reductions of single-use plastics. So another important policy this year that we've introduced. Lastly, the one policy that I think I have a little time to speak to you guys about is Senate Bill 545, which is an update of our Oregon health codes, which is better to allow for and enable reuse. Believe it or not, in Oregon Health Code and rules, and in fact, Health Code, National and Federal Health Code for many states does not allow for individuals to bring their own containers for reuse in bulk, produce, or even takeout. We've seen the laws change in California and in Washington to start to address this, but many other states have yet to address it, including Oregon. And so we really found out about this policy from businesses. This was a very business-first policy that was brought to us. We had zero waste businesses and co-ops that have been allowing individuals to bring their own containers or have been encouraging individuals to reuse their own reuse systems in their stores for really decades. But during the pandemic, some enforcement actions came down from the health authority and from the Oregon Department of Agriculture. So as businesses started to find out about this, they had to change policies. Customers started to find out about it. And over the last 3 years, we really worked pretty hard to try and update and modernize those health code and associated rules to address reusable containers. So in Oregon, we had 2 different authorities on that rule. So in the retail establishments, like your grocery stores, your cooperatives, those all are under a retail code under Oregon Department of Agriculture. And they've actually recently made some moves to adopt new rules. And so we're happy that Senate Bill 545 has already made its or accomplished half of what we wanted it to do, which is to update the rules for the retail establishment. So that just went into effect. But the other half of the bill addresses the other agency that manages code and rules for restaurants, and that's the Oregon Health Authority. So Senate Bill 545 moves a little bit further with the groundwork that we've made in retail to address the same rule in restaurants, so that takeout and other food vendors can allow for reusable containers and takeout. This is, interestingly enough, something that we came and brought forward for plastic pollution issues, and we've always encouraged reuse. And as we dug into this, we really found that there's a whole host of other sort of business freedoms and consumer freedoms that are come along with reusable containers, food access, financial budget constraints, and then just consumer choice, freedom to avoid toxic chemicals, to avoid single-use packaging. Was a really unique things that sort of popped up that we didn't realize and we didn't feel like would be upfront and with this policy. But there's a lot of social and other cultural things that go along with reuse. In addition to reducing our plastic pollution and our single-use plastic. So we're really happy to bring this policy forward, and we're really excited to hear all three of these policies today in the Senate and Environment and Energy and Environment Committee here at 1 o'clock. So that's all I have. And I think that my 5 minutes is probably about up. Miho, anything else I need to cover, or should I pass it back to you?
That was perfect. Thanks, Charlie. And I really like your shirt. Yeah, good luck with the hearing, and thanks so much for joining. And you and Celeste both have really busy days, so I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, there's a question for you in the chat. Unfortunately, we won't have time to answer it like live, but if you can type in the answer, that would be great. So thanks again. And we're gonna move up north next. We have Pam Clough, an advocate from Environment Washington. So Pam, take it away.
Thanks, Miho. My name is Pam Clough, and I'm an advocate with Environment Washington. For those who aren't familiar with our organization, we're a citizen-based environmental group, and our mission is to protect our air, water, and the places we love. I'm excited to share more about Washington's plastic breakup journey. Like all of our states, it's definitely an ongoing process. I would say that the journey to break up with plastics in Washington started around 2009, or probably slightly before that. That was the year that the city of Everett passed a local reusable bag ordinance, and they were the first city in the state to pass to ban those thin single-use grocery bags. And over the following decade, over 37 cities and municipalities across the state followed suit. So I think it's a really cool example of how local organizing can, lead to even broader change. In 2020, Washington took the bag ban policy statewide, and also with that ban on those thin single-use grocery bags, they put in place an 8-cent fee on paper grocery bags and thicker plastic bag that is intended to be reusable. Things have really picked up steam in the 2020s, because the following year, in 2021, Washington passed the nation's strongest ban on polystyrene foam, which included foam cups and takeout containers, packing peanuts, and foam coolers. There were a few other elements of that policy as well. The bill now law made single-use plastic foodware like straws and utensils and condiment packets available upon request only. And that actually went into effect in Washington January of last year. And the bill also established recycled content standards for beverage containers. So for folks who aren't familiar with that, it just means that by specific dates, the beverage containers will need to be made of gradually increasing amounts of recycled materials. So these are some really good first steps in Washington. but we are still very much in a toxic relationship with plastic. And so as many of you guys probably, see in your own homes and stores, we have so much plastic packaging on our shelves, and so much of that is not recyclable at all. And so that's why we are working to make Washington the 5th state in the nation to pass a producer responsibility program for packaging through the Washington Recycling and Packaging Act, or the WRAP Act is the acronym that we're using for it. Very clever. The bill is sponsored by State Senator Christine Rolfes and Representative Liz Berry, and they've been great partners and leaders in working to improve Washington's recycling system and reducing waste. I'll highlight the three sections of this policy. It's a big bill. So first, it would establish a producer responsibility system for packaging. So for those who aren't familiar with what that means, it's requiring that companies that actually make packaging decisions to be financially responsible for the end of life management of these materials, rather than the costs of recycling, the collection and processing of recycled materials falling on state residents and cities and municipalities. 4 other places have already passed these types of policies, and we want Washington to be the 5th. This bill would also extend post-consumer recycled content requirements for more types of plastic packaging, and it would create a bottle deposit program, and that's been shown to generate really high recycling rates for beverage containers. So Oregon, we want to be more like you. So yeah, we're excited about the momentum that this policy has, and there actually is a public hearing on the bill tomorrow. So if you live in Washington and want to help, please contact me. Maybe one of the hosts could put my email in the chat. Next, I wanted to highlight another bill that's really exciting, House Bill 1085, the Plastic Reduction Act, and that's sponsored by a Washington representative. She's a freshman. Her name's Charlotte Mena. And this bill would take action in 3 ways to reduce plastic pollution. First, where building standards already require drinking fountains, it would require that water bottle refill stations should also be installed to encourage the use of reusable water bottles. Second, it would ban most new foam-filled floats for docks in Washington waters. And last, it would phase out mini plastic packaging for toiletries in hotels or other Airbnbs and those types of establishments. So shampoo, conditioner, hand soap, lotion, that type of thing. One thing that's exciting to highlight around that policy is it's already made it through 2 committees, which is very fast for the Washington State Legislature. It's just flying through and actually received unanimous bipartisan support in a vote out of the Appropriations Committee last week, which is a big deal, and we're really excited about that. We also have a Right to Repair Act and moving in Washington, which that's a policy that Charlie mentioned as well. They're moving in Oregon as well. So it got really close to passing last year. So we're hoping that this is the year that it gets across the finish line. That's all I have. So Miho, I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thanks, Pam. And I loved how you started with the examples about local ordinances paving the way to get more attention and momentum to pass statewide legislation. So, and great to see that you're getting momentum with your current statewide bills as well. So thanks, Pam. And now I'm going to move over to Abe Scarr, who is the director of Illinois PIRG. And we'll make sure to add their name in the chat too, so you can see who's talking and support their work.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So again, my name is Abe Scarr. I'm the director of Illinois PIRG, PIRG Public Interest Research Group. We're a citizen-funded public interest advocacy organization with a broad agenda, but getting rid of single-use plastics is certainly a priority for us. And I'm speaking today also on behalf of the Coalition for Plastic Reduction, which is a coalition we helped convene, which is a group of a little over 35 environmental and community organizations and also cultural institutions like Shed Aquarium, who've come together to try to reduce single-use plastic waste here in Illinois. And it's an exciting effort because I'd say we haven't had a good sustained organized effort on plastic pollution in Illinois for some time, and we're behind in terms of our policies. Our group started working together informally right before the pandemic started. We were getting behind a Chicago ordinance that would have done many great things, but that got short-circuited when the pandemic hit. And over the last couple of years, we've formalized our coalition, built out our membership, and for the last 2 years, prioritized working on getting rid of polystyrene foam serviceware. And we're hopeful that this is the year we can get that over the finish line. So last year, we won a committee vote in one chamber. That's the most progress we've made so far. And again, think this year we may be able to get it passed. Seems like we're a little bit behind in some of the other states in terms of our legislative process. We've gotten our bill introduced in the Senate. We've got a great bill number, Senate Bill 100. Our House bill, I believe, will be introduced today, or was introduced this morning. I haven't seen a bill number yet. And we will be working to have committee hearings and getting the bill voted out of committee in the next month. One thing that's just on the horizon for us, which is exciting, again, since we're a relatively new coalition and we've kind of been operating under the pandemic, we're holding our first lobby day next week on Wednesday, the 22nd, just focused on this one bill, the foam bill, and have a goal of 30 people attending. And so far we have close to 60 RSVPs already. So we're hopefully, assuming the majority of folks can still make it, bust through our goal and have a really exciting lobby day next week. Some of the other things we're doing, we're working in order to get this bill over the finish line. We've negotiated with one of the main business groups, the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, or IRMA. They've gone neutral on the bill, and that's a huge step forward and a huge reason why we may be able to get it passed. We're also working with the restaurant industry and have gotten a really positive response from a lot of coffee shops and restaurants who are already doing the right thing and want to see the state move in a more sustainable direction, who are eagerly signing up to join our coalition, to be a voice in the media and with legislators, and we'll have a number of them down there with us next week. So that's our top priority number one. We see it as the first incremental step. Obviously, there's a lot more to do over time, but until we get our first victory under our belt, we don't want to stretch ourselves too thin. That said, there are some other issues we'll be monitoring this year and have some folks engaged in. That does include an extended producer responsibility bill, where I think there could be an opportunity to get something good done next year. There was a bad so-called chemical recycling bill passed a couple of years ago that legislators trying to extend that we will be trying to stop, and we're ripping off the Washington idea around water fountains. We'll have a bill around that as well. Hopefully this is going to be an important year for us to get our first major legislative victory and lay the groundwork for many more in the years to come. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Abe. That's great. And yeah, for folks that have lobbying days in your state, I would encourage you to join them. They're really fun, a great opportunity to learn about other organizations working on plastic issues and other environmental issues, and just meeting a wonderful group of folks. And I love that you're also working with businesses and restaurant industries. That's super smart and strategic. So good luck with everything. And thanks for sharing. Okay, moving on. I know this is like very rapid fire. I love that we're on time and it's great. So we're going to move on to Tennessee. So we've got Dan Firth with Sierra Club and the Holston Valley Regional Conservation Committee Director with the Tennessee chapter. Take it away, Dan.
Well, thank you. I'm also chair of our chapter Solid Waste and Mining Committee. And we are just really now getting started in the whole process of EPR and all that kind of thing. And so, I mean, growing up, I learned about the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle. I worked on paper drives to collect newspapers and recycling. Plastic waste was not a thing at that time, but later recycling became normal, and I put recycling out at the curb once a week, and it disappeared with the full expectation that it was all recycled. I probably wish cycled more than I would like to admit, but as we all know, recycling is hard to do well. Once China's national sword policy kicked in, curbside recycling in my community ended. Plastics recycling ended because of unreliable markets, no regional material recovery facility, the high cost of transportation, and a plethora of unrecyclable plastic packaging, all of which was outside of the control of the consumer. I worked for a major chemical company where I saw new products developed without regard for their final disposal. Labeling was inhibited sorting and contaminated bales. Biodegradables with no expectation that they would reach a composting facility. Multi-material products that were unrecyclable. In my retirement, I found my way to working on solid waste issues. I work with the Bristol, Virginia, and Tennessee communities that are currently being assaulted daily by emissions from the, the Bristol, Virginia landfill. Landfills across the volunteer state are filling up, and no one wants to live near new ones. Plastic litter is clogging our Tennessee rivers and streams. Plastic bags fly from the trees and then inundate the roadways and fields. And so without a change in direction, it'll only get worse here in Tennessee. And so now's the time to act in Tennessee. We surveyed rural and urban solid waste programs across Tennessee. Managers said that they needed money, people, and infrastructure to operate their programs effectively. Some of them pleaded with us for help. We surveyed community members across Tennessee. Tennesseans want to recycle well and have confidence that their materials that they collect are actually recycled. Unfortunately, we as consumers cannot move the needle on our own. Only the companies have control over both the amount and the type of packaging materials. So the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act, which is now introduced, will engage producers as partners in implementing the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, and recycle for packaging materials. The bill will divert increasing amounts of recoverable plastic and other packaging materials from Tennessee's rapidly filling landfills. The bill will broaden and standardize recycling of plastics across Tennessee, ensuring all Tennesseans have fair access to recycling. It develops markets for recycled materials and funds the necessary infrastructure. The bill will bring long-term sustainability to counties and municipalities' plastic recycling programs, along with accompanying jobs. Empowering the producers fits the political environment in Tennessee. But to be effective, it must be accompanied by transparency and oversight. Currently, the entire recycling process is cloaked in darkness. Citizens do not have confidence that recyclables that they collect are even recycled. And so the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act will provide oversight through an advisory board and then transparency through reporting. And with the landfills filling up, Tennessee businesses are building a circular economy and a growing tsunami of packaging waste. The time has come for a new approach to plastic waste in Tennessee. And so we believe that now is the time for the Tennessee Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. So that's where we're starting. We're starting off with the EPR bill, and we're going to see where it goes. And right now we're a bunch of volunteers, but we're going to be building a coalition and seeing what we can do.
That's great. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love that. Yeah, you surveyed your community and the solid waste program before to get a really great sense of what the solution and what the problems are. And so, yeah, good luck with that. And I also enjoyed hearing about, the need for transparency. And I think that's definitely critical, across the board. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, next I'm going to move on to New Jersey with Amy Goldsmith, who is the New Jersey State Director with Clean Water Action New Jersey.
Thank you. So Clean Water Action, we're a national organization and we're in 16 states across the country with over 1 million members. And we just celebrated our 50th anniversary of the passage of the Clean Water Act. Our founder helped write and pass the original Clean Water Act, so hence our name, Clean Water Action. So very excited to be here, and we've been working on trash and toxics and incinerators and for many years. And in New Jersey, we had a great trifecta of great things happening in our 2021 legislative session. We passed a food waste processing law for large generators like supermarkets and institutions. We passed a stricter recycled content bill that deals with multiple forms of packaging and gets up to 50% recycled content by 2036. And we passed the ban on single-use, those thin plastic bags that were talked about by others. But we in New Jersey banned paper bags in grocery stores in addition to plastic, as well as polyfoam and straws by request. So now what we're doing is defending those laws, making sure that they don't get weakened. And we're actually working with the food pantries and food banks because they are included in the law and they want to do the right thing. And we're helping them make the switch to reusable containers as people come for food and meals, and are working with groups to help Meals on Wheels programs. And we have some pilot programs going on in that regard. This term, which is the legislative session, is 2022, 2023. We're working on some of the good, bad, and the ugly of plastics. And, we have a lot of toxics in New Jersey. Some people pride themselves on how many toxics they can withstand before they get sick, but I don't think that's a really good way to do our things. And to fight our fight and identify ourselves as New Jerseyans. So we work to get rid of those toxics, both in the generation of them and the disposal. And so we're working on an EPR bill, and I know the great Western states want to be number 5 in the list of EPR, but maybe we'll beat you. We're in a competition here across the country, and we think we have a really good EPR bill. So and we hope it'll serve as a model for others to push more and faster in packaging reduction, to ban chemical recycling in the state. And we're in the discussion stage, in part because we're now in the budget season. So legislators don't like to talk about anything but money between now and June 30th, when they have to pass about balanced budget. And New Jersey is a unique state where every single year we have elections. So in the off year or the odd number years, which we're in now, the entire state legislature is up for re-election. And so they don't want to vote on anything that'll get anybody happy or mad. So the likelihood of them moving the bill is probably at the after they finish their elections. And it is an important time to hold them accountable because many of them are running again, but also there's a whole slew of people, we're up to at least 15 who are not running. And so there's some competitive races, and it's a good way to hold them to account. On the sort of, on the not so great side of plastics, as I mentioned, we're fighting a number of pieces of legislation on chemical recycling. We have somebody who is a long time environmental advocate who somehow drank the Kool-Aid, partly because BASF is in his district, and thought that, I don't know what to do with this plastics anymore. Maybe we should just burn it. So we finally convinced him and the Senate Environment Chair that no, that's not the way to go. But there are still bills floating around that we're opposing. And also there's some bills that are trying to exempt chemical recycling from the solid waste regulations, which would in essence make them uncontrollable. So we're also working on that. The other is that we have a number of energy bills that you would think, why are you working on, what does that have to do with plastics? Well, actually, we're fighting, as many states are, to get incinerators to be not considered a class 2 renewable. And in New Jersey, they get millions of dollars every year in subsidies from the state to allow them to keep burning, which means that they're burning plastic in addition to everything else they're burning. So we're fighting legislation that allows them to get these renewable energy credits. And there's also another energy bill called the Renewable Portfolio Standard that also has language in it about incinerators and the subsidies that they get. And the environmental justice organizations in our state are taking the lead on this issue. So we follow their direction. The other is that there's a lot of activity to try and call, to allow renewable natural gas, which is, it's kind of an oxymoron. Gas is not renewable. So, but they're trying to use different kinds of games to allow more methane to be, used and extracted and run through pipelines. And so we know that the feedstock of plastics is frack gas, and we're fighting that tooth and nail. So we don't want to perpetuate the fossil fuel industry, which then perpetuates plastics. So we don't mind capturing the methane off a landfill, but we don't want to be building facilities that perpetuate that, and plastics is part of that. So all of these things are interconnected with each other. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is that we are working on something that's not legislative, but could be a building block for work in the future. And I think I mentioned this work that we're doing with Meals on Wheels and food pantries. And we see that as really important because usually people who want to weaken our laws, like the bag law, are trying to say, oh, well, poor people won't do it, or people who are food insecure don't want to use reusable bags. And we have to debunk that and make sure that we have everybody that part of the solution, no matter what neighborhood you're in. Everybody has a right to not have litter on their streets, their drains clogged, being poisoned by the toxics that are made in environmental justice communities and low-income communities. So we all want to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And I love that. Yeah, just even if it's not a policy solution, the plastic pollution problem is so vast that, yeah, all these pieces can fit together and work towards that, making that progress. So thanks again.
Sure enough.
All right. I'm going to move on to New York. So we have Jennifer Congdon, who's the Deputy Director of Beyond Plastics.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So New York continues on its path to break up with plastics. And I think that the New York legislators also have the inspiration of trying to be the 5th EPR state in the country, as evidenced by the fact that we have 3 proposals right now in New York State for extended producer responsibility. 2 of those proposals are among the strongest in the nation. Our president and founder, Judith Enck, is actually testifying today in front of the New York State Senate and Assembly to go over the differences in the various proposals. And we have an advocacy day in person tomorrow, and then a virtual opportunity on March 2nd, which we included in all of the follow-up information that you guys will receive. So I just want to say, again, these 2 bills that we are supporting and are going to be working pretty much nonstop on this legislative session call for a 50% reduction in single-use packaging. One is in 10 years and the other is 12. We prefer 10, of course, but they're both really on target. The remaining packaging would need to be really improved for recyclability. So you would have to be able to recycle the rest of the packaging. One of the bills actually expands packaging, the definition to include single-use plastic items. And so if we end up with that, we wouldn't need to work on the skip the stuff maybe as much, because it would actually be a straight up 50% reduction of those materials, although it would still be good to do skip the stuff. But it would be nice to have that piece in EPR. Both of the bills reject chemical recycling as a viable recycling option. And like all the other extended producer responsibility proposals, there's a transfer of responsibility from right now it's the taxpayers pay for all of the management of these materials, but the bills transfer that back to the producers who are making the packaging decisions. And that's a really important piece. But there's two caveats to that. One is you can't put the packaging industry in charge of the reduction targets. You heard Oregon, the guy from Oregon saying now they're going back and adding reduction targets to their EPR. States moving forward at this point really need to just include those right in the legislation, because we've learned from the 50 jurisdictions around the country that have EPR for packaging that you have to do that, otherwise you don't reduce packaging. And then the other piece is that the funds that are collected from the companies should absolutely go back to the taxpayers and to fund recycling. But it should also improve the recycling infrastructure, which I think most of the bills around the country do. And then, but they should also go to funding reuse and refill infrastructure. And the two bills that we support in New York do all of those things. And so that's really exciting idea to get a revenue source for reuse and refill infrastructure. And so I will actually just wrap up because I think we were a little bit over time. But I'll say again, if anybody's interested in doing work in New York, we have a coalition of there's about like 60 people on the coalition, representing maybe about 12 to 20 groups. And we meet once a month. So please get in touch with me and I'll add you. And also we have on March 2nd, an advocacy day from 12 to noon. It's a virtual day. And so please sign up for that if you are interested in advocating in New York.
Thanks, Jennifer, for all that great information. And yes, the lobbying day information and additional resources will be sent out on a follow-up email. So last but not least, we are moving to Massachusetts with Janet Domenitz, the State Director of MASSPIRG.
Hi all, can you hear me? Great, thanks so much for having me. I'm Janet Domenitz from MASSPIRG, and as you heard earlier, PIRG is the Public Interest Research Group. I'm here in Massachusetts. We have a national federation of organizations. My brethren Abe spoke earlier, and we are here to promote the public interest and today to talk about reducing plastics. So I just wanted to say three quick things. First of all, for those of you who have not been to Massachusetts, we are lucky enough to have it all here. We have oceans, mountains, lakes, parks, and people, I can say today in theme, are in love with the outdoors and with nature. And in all four seasons, skiing, hiking, biking, walking, and more. At the same time, people here hate waste. It's a New England thrifty conservation thing. So that's just to set the stage for why working to reduce plastics. I know it's important everywhere, but I'm coming to you from the Bay State and telling you our story. So that's number one. Number two, we have good news and bad news. The good news is people have taken action on this issue. We have 351 cities and towns. 155 of them, which represent over 60% of the state's population, have already passed local ordinances to ban single-use bags, plastic bags. Similarly, we're up to now almost 50 cities and towns have banned styrene. So people here want action. That is the good news. The bad news is we are behind just about everybody else on this call. We don't have any statewide laws on the books to reduce plastics. So that's the third thing I want to say real quickly. Our legislative session just started last month. It's a 2-year session. We have a number of bills to make the statewide plastic ban a law. Same thing with styrene. We want to update our bottle bill. We have several producer responsibility bills pending, and we are back in person in our state house. So we are absolutely committed to mobilizing the public. We've got student chapters, we've got members, we've got a big coalition. We will include our zero waste legislative agenda in the follow-up materials. And if you are in Massachusetts, please contact me, get involved. We're behind and we should be ahead. So looking forward to working with anyone and everyone who can help get us over the finish line here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks for your enthusiasm. Super inspiring. Yes. So those were all the states and our policy experts. Again, thank you everyone for presenting your expertise. Sorry, it was such rapid fire. We'll definitely send information, but I hope everyone got a sense of what's happening throughout the country, and we are all very passionate about breaking up with plastic. So at this point, I'm honored to pass it over to Jenn Engstrom, the Policy Director of California PIRG, to introduce our keynote speaker, California Attorney General Rob Bonta.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Jenn Engstrom. I'm the State Director for CALPIRG, our PIRG in California. And I have the honor of introducing California's Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Rob Bonta was sworn in as the Attorney General in California in April of 2021. He's the first person of Filipino descent and the second Asian American to occupy this position. He has a strong passion for justice and fairness. As the people's attorney, he seeks accountability for those who abuse their power and harm others. And just in the last year, he has launched an investigation into fossil fuel and petrochemical industries for their role in causing the global plastics crisis and perpetuating the myth that recycling can solve the problem fully. He's also launched an investigation into plastic bag companies in California, demanding that they substantiate their claims that those thick bags that we are very familiar with in California are actually recyclable. So Attorney General Bonta, I think I can speak for everyone on this call for thanking you very much for working to hold plastic companies accountable. And thank you for being here on this Valentine's Day as we celebrate the work being done around the country to break up with plastic. So I hand it over to you.
Well, thank you. And what an honor it is to join all of you today and to be in your virtual company, the company of so many activists fighting to reduce plastic pollution. So thank you for all that you do every day and what I know you will continue to do. Thank you, Jenn, for your very kind and generous introduction. And thank you to CALPIRG for speaking up and standing up to the plastics industry. This Valentine's Day, we need to break up with plastic because we're in an unhealthy relationship. It doesn't matter what state you're in. If you drive down the street, if you walk along a beach or visit a local park, you're likely to see the same thing. Plastic and plastic particulates clogging our landscapes, choking our waterways, and poisoning our wildlife. Plastic is in our food. It's in our water. It's in our air. We literally eat, drink, and breathe it. It's a toxic relationship. And again, it's time to break up. When your partner is lying to you for decades, it's time to hit the road. And we are here because for the last half century, the plastics industry has engaged in a campaign of deception that has wreaked havoc on our environment, our people, and our natural resources. Recent reporting reveals that internal documents from experts dating back to the 1970s warned petrochemical executives that recycling was, quote, infeasible, and that there was serious doubt that plastic recycling can ever be made viable on an economic basis. They knew this back in the 70s. Yet just a decade later, in the 80s, the plastics industry responded to public outcry over plastic pollution by launching an aggressive and deceptive marketing and advertising campaign to convince the public that we could recycle our way out of the plastic waste problem. But we can't. The truth they knew then and they know now is a vast majority of plastic cannot be recycled. The truth is the recycling rate has never surpassed 9%. The truth is California alone dumps more than 12,000 tons of plastic into landfills every day, enough to fill 219 Olympic-size swimming pools. And the truth is, while plastic pollution may impact everyone, it is our frontline communities who bear the brunt of the plastics crisis. So we say enough. Last year, my office launched a first of its kind investigation into the fossil fuel and petrochemical industries for their role in causing and exacerbating the global plastics pollution crisis. As part of this investigation, we subpoenaed ExxonMobil, a major source of global plastics pollution, for information relating to this decades-long plastics deception campaign. This investigation could not have come at a more urgent moment. We are in a global plastics pollution crisis, more than 300 million tons of plastic. Let's remember, oil and fossil fuel-based products are produced annually, a nearly 20,000% increase since the 1950s. This is unsustainable. But as fossil fuels continue to be replaced by clean energy, big oil has doubled down on plastics as their revenue lifeline, recently investing hundreds of billions to expand plastic production worldwide. Through our investigation, we seek to uncover the fossil fuel and petrochemical industry's ongoing efforts to deceive the public. We are also trying to understand whether and to what extent these actions may have violated the law. If we discover that these companies violated the law, we will not hesitate to hold them accountable. But we know that petrochemical and fossil fuel industries are not the sole culprits of this crisis. We each must do more. We need to cut single-use plastics out of our lives and pass legislation and take action that gets us from couples therapy to divorce court. Again, it's time to break up. As Attorney General, as a Californian, and as a father, I refuse to condemn future generations to a planet that is beyond fixing. And at DOJ, we know we can't solve this problem alone. We rely on continued support from all of you to help protect our state and our communities from a crisis that has already cost us too much. Thank you for your important efforts in this space, and thank you all for having me today. I appreciate your activism, your commitment, your passion. We together, and you specifically, you have agency, you have power, you have potency to refuse to accept the unacceptable and to change our world for the better. We know the world's not going to change itself. We need you to change it. So thank you for all you do, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you so much.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Attorney General Bonta, with the staggering statistics and highlighting the environmental justice issues and the impacts to the frontline community. Your work and leadership is so important, and we're so grateful for you being here and all the work that you and your staff do. So thank you so much for your time. So with that, I'm going to move on. We have 5 minutes left, but I'm going to turn it over to Holly with US PIRG to talk about action items that you can take starting today to help us and collectively break up with plastics. So Gabby, if you could share the screen real quick, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's great to have you all here. My name's Holly, as Miho said. I'm US PIRG Zero Waste Associate. And our action today will be about writing to our legislators in the states and getting them and writing them Valentines to get them to break up with plastics. So the first step in this process is finding their information. So I'm going to send a link in the chat for a website where what you do is you put in your address and then it gives you the information not only on their email address, but also if you want to write a letter, their actual address. So once my slides come up, the link will also be in there. But yeah, so you're gonna go to that website and put in your address and the information you'll need to either email or send a letter by mail to your legislator will come up. And then once you do that, we'll get started on what to include in that letter.
Gabby, if you scroll down, I think we'll be able to see Holly's slides. Thanks.
Yes, and just so you guys know, we're gonna, since we only have a couple minutes left, we're gonna go over this really quickly. So you can just write bullet points for what to include in your letter. First you want to introduce yourself, explain who you are, say where you are from in your district. If you want, you can include a sentence or two about what you do for a job, if you like to spend time in the outdoors, things like that. Next, you're gonna state what bill you support, or what you would like to see introduced. If you're from a state that we mentioned on this webinar, you can bring up some of the legislation we talked about, and things like that, just to write about the specific bill you want to see introduced rather than just that they should reduce plastic. The next is, and this is really important, explain why reducing plastic is important to you. Your legislators really want to hear from you and what you think. So explaining stories of if you've seen trash in a local park or on a beach, or something about wanting to see the earth cleaner for your kids or grandkids, would be really important in the letter. Yeah, and naming someplace in your district that you've seen trash could also be really effective. Next, we have a couple slogans in here about breaking up from a toxic relationship with plastics to add into that Valentine aspect of the letter. Then you can include some statistics about plastic and how it's affecting our environment. Some of them are included in here, and once again, these slides will be sent out later with some of the resources. Last, you want to thank them for working on this sort of issue. If you know if they've supported previous plastic legislation, you can also include that. A lot of that information might be found online through the legislative websites. Yeah, and then lastly, you want to sign the letter and include your home address to show that you are from their district, because these legislators really want to hear from you guys. Yeah, that's all I have. That was pretty quick, but if you want to just write down some notes and send out this email or handwritten or typed letter later, yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, Holly, for that really useful information. And again, we'll share all this information out along with the recording. And we also have resources, our presenters, the webinar organizers. There's a vast array of various resources at your fingertips. So as you're thinking about advocating various campaigns or want to learn about different issues, please check those out. Again, they will be provided. And I know we're at the top of the hour, so I really want to thank everyone for joining, and a big thanks to our keynote speaker, Attorney General Bonta, as well as our policy experts. And I also want to thank our webinar coalition, especially Celeste Smith-Swango, Holly Thompson, and Gabby Siegel for helping to organize the webinar and for the tech support. So I hope you all enjoyed the webinar and got a chance to share your love for our environment with your loved ones today. Happy Valentine's Day, and I hope you will join us in taking steps to break up with plastics. So thanks so much and have a great day.